The United Arab Emirates says it will withdraw from the Organisation of Petroleum Exporting Countries, known as OPEC, effective May the 1st. That is according to the state news agency WAM. This announcement comes as the oil producers group has been struggling to move shipments through the Strait of Hormuz. Well, that announcement of the UAE withdrawing from OPEC comes as oil's upward march shows no signs of letting up. 2 months into the Iran war, the price of Brent crude topped $110 a barrel for the first time in 3 weeks. Today, WTI, the US benchmark, also trading higher. Well, CNN's Eleni Jokos covering the very latest for us from Dubai. Eleni, the UAE is a major oil producer, founding member of OPEC. How significant a move is this?
This is very significant, Becky. It brings a 59-year relationship to an end, and we just saw this posted on local media, and this is the statement. I want to read you a little bit of this because it gives you some insight into what the UAE government is thinking. They say this decision came after a thorough review of the UAE's production policy and its current and future capacity, and in view of what the national interest requires and the state's commitment to contribute effectively to meeting the urgent needs of the market. Meanwhile, geopolitical fluctuations continue in the near term through the disturbances in the Arabian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, which affect supply dynamics as the basic trends indicate continued growth in global energy demand in the medium and long term. So just to give you a little bit of insight in terms of the UAE's capacity right now, in terms of what they want to be producing by 2027, we know they want to take that production up to around 5 million barrels per day by 2027 right now. In terms of what the OPEC rules have been, it's around 3.5 million barrels per day. So clearly there's always been sort of an undercurrent of trying to increase the amount of production from the UAE. But this is absolutely significant. We need to look at the timing of this while we're seeing restrictions in the Strait of Hormuz, which of course has affected the movement of oil and products from the region, specifically in the Gulf states. And also quite important to note, in terms of the underlying messaging here, you've got to remember that Qatar withdrew from OPEC in 2018, and that was a very symbolic move, moving more into gas. Here we have a significant oil producer, Becky, that is now withdrawing from OPEC and OPEC plus countries. You've also got to remember that Russia joined the OPEC membership in around 2016. That caused quite a lot of questions in terms of the way that OPEC was looking at the overall production capacity of all nations that were included. But OPEC's premise, Becky, is about controlling supply and demand and, of course, stabilization of the oil market. We're looking at a very different scenario now, where we've got Brent crude prices sitting at $111 a barrel in a very new reality, where you've got this energy supply shock coming to the fore. And the UAE taking this very interesting stance here. They also say stable global energy system depends on flexible, reliable and affordable supply. The UAE investing in evolving efficiently and responsibly, prioritizing, they say, stability, affordability, as well as sustainability. They also mention that they joined OPEC in 1967. This was prior to the formation of the UAE. So this is a very long-standing relationship. OPEC members, of course, standing, at around 11 now. Once the UAE decides to leave, it's going to happen on the 1st of May.
Robin, this is an announcement made just in the past few minutes. How significant is the UAE's role in OPEC, and what are the potential short and long-term market impacts of this decision?
Well, very big news. As you say, you mentioned Qatar leaving a few years back. It was a much smaller producer. The UAE is one of the top three in the organisation, and the one which was going to grow production more than anybody else. So always a very influential player, generally working closely with the Saudis, but always a very influential second voice. So, yes, for them to leave is certainly a big shock to the organisation.
The UAE says this is about, and I quote here, national interest and flexibility. What was it specifically constrained from doing inside OPEC?
Well, the UAE had been following the OPEC quotas, of course, and which most recently limited it to about 3.2 million barrels per day of production, and yet the capacity has reached at least 4.8 million and well on the way to 5 million. And the UAE even had thoughts of pushing beyond that, perhaps to 6 million of capacity. So they were more constrained really than anybody else in OPEC by those production limits. And yes, they were allowed some small increases along the way, but not enough to meet their aspirations for much higher production.
Yeah, and for some years there has been reports, you and I know this, of internal friction within the group on production quotas, the UAE seeking higher output limits to match its spare capacity. It's got low-cost production advantages, of course. The statement references instability in the Strait of Hormuz. How much do you believe regional security concerns factor into this decision?
Well, as you say, the UAE had expressed some concerns about OPEC and the limitations on it for a while. I don't think we expected that would lead to an exit, but obviously the war has changed things. And there's a timing aspect here, of course. If you're going to leave the organisation, best to do it now when there aren't really any practical limits on production from OPEC, and the limits are all externally imposed. So it doesn't affect anything in OPEC's immediate production policy. And who knows, when the war and the blockade are sorted out, OPEC will have to think again about all of its quotas anyway. And that could be, of course, be months off. So in that sense, it's a good timing. If there is a time to leave, now's the time.